Sometimes I'll still dress just because I don't want to be in my pajamas today. You know, I need to have some level of focus at some points that my neck beard starts to fill in, and I've never wanted a neck beard, so actually I probably need to shave here. But anyway.
Well, if you got a dollar on just a lousy down, know that I got rhythm that could suit your budget fine.
Hi, this is Patrick with THMercantile. I've got a different video today because I was tagged to do the quarantine Q&A. I was tagged by Katie over at Vintage and Vinyl. And if you've not seen this floating around, it's been going for a couple of weeks, so I will try not to be hurt that I was the last man picked for the kickball team. But it is a series of questions that basically just cover what life has been like during this very interesting era that we are in. So I will go ahead and cover the questions as they've been laid out in the challenge. Question number 1, did you prepare for the quarantine or did you wait until the last minute? The answer to that's kind of in the middle. For those of you who have followed my Instagram and watched some of my videos already, you've probably met or heard about Amelia, my daughter, who at the time the quarantine was starting was a student doing her study abroad in Germany. And right before Illinois, which is where I live, was basically shut down, internationally, some of the other countries were already going through some level of quarantining or some level of lockdown. And the week that we issued the travel advisory that no non-American nationals would be allowed to come back into the country, this school where my daughter attends canceled all of their study abroad programs and recalled all of their students. So we were going through some hurdles trying to figure out the best way to handle that. One, to try to accommodate flights when we hadn't planned on her coming back. She had to deal with getting rid of or getting out of an apartment that she had a lease on, everything with the university. It was an interesting time for everything. And we went through a short period where we were lobbying the school to actually let her stay. At that time, we actually truly felt, and even in hindsight, I feel it could have been a good decision, that basically we did not want her traveling along with every American trying to return home. She would be flying into the Chicago O'Hare Airport, which is one of the busiest airports in the world. And the days following the travel advisory, the customs hall was insane. Hundreds and hundreds of people completely touching each other, like no social distancing, no anything. We felt it was unsafe for Amelia to travel. So we were trying to work with the school. The school was trying to, work with us, and they were trying to do what was both responsible for the students, but then also keeping their own liability within check. All of that was happening at the same time the world was changing around us. And so when Illinois got its lockdown orders, I kind of expected it. So I didn't particularly panic, but I hadn't done a huge amount of prep going into it. I did make one visit to the local, we've got a Woodman's store, which is a regional chain that's right down the street from me. So I did pop into there, and it was at that point was already starting to get a little crazy. What I found most noteworthy of that visit was the self-check lanes for 20 items or less were completely empty, while the full service and the full service checkout lanes were literally backed up down the aisles. It was almost impossible to social distance in that environment. So what I did was I bought 20 items, checked out, put them in my car, came back in, bought another 20 items, and then left. Worked for me, and I'm not sure why more people didn't do that. But regardless, I did a little bit of prepping, and then it kind of all started happening at the same time. My company put a travel ban in place before the state started quarantining, so it did eventually kind of sneak up on me, but I did my best. Now, question number 2. Are you secretly happy that you're home, or are you miserable and desperately want to go outside? I hate to say it again, but it probably falls again somewhere in the middle. I am gratefully still employed, so I have a day job, which also in normal times I work from home in that job as well. So a lot of the daytime activities have not changed significantly, so I don't really feel any differently in that regard. What has changed is my evening activities. Again, if you followed me in the past, you know I've done a lot with theater, and because of what's going on, all theater has pretty much ceased to exist. They've stopped rehearsals, shows were canceled. I was scheduled to direct a show which I had just auditioned for and cast, and then it was canceled. So suddenly my evenings are free, and that has proven to be a little bit more stir crazy worthy. That typically when I finish my day job, I would have someplace else to go, and suddenly I'm in the same location 24 hours a day. So it's not so much to say that I'm miserable because of it, but it definitely has been a lifestyle change, and it's changed the way I look at a clock and the way I look at a calendar, just simply because of the way I used to keep track of what day of the week it was based on what rehearsal schedule or what theaters or shows were going on. Now I don't have that. So that I miss quite a bit, and that does make me a little stir crazy and a little sad sometimes, because theater had become a very important part of my life, and I do miss that is not happening. But that really is less to do with me being stuck inside. I'm not miserable because I'm inside. I would just rather be doing something else. Question number 3, who is the last person or persons you checked on during the quarantine? Admittedly, I've been fairly good about staying indoors. I'm not really going out. So the question throws me a little bit, because when it says checked on, to me that means you've gone and visited them. So I'm basically just going to answer that in the regard that there's a couple of people who, like myself, live alone. And so I'll text them and you just touch base and make sure that they're okay, that they have access to things. So probably the last person I did that with is one of my best friends, Elizabeth. And she is able to get out. She happened to be laid off as part of COVID. She has found new employment, which makes her essential during this time. So it's not like she's locked up and no one sees her. But I at least touch base with her a little bit and just make sure that she's doing okay, both physically and emotionally, because it's a difficult time to go through when you're let go of your regular job and you're doing something really just to make ends meet until, things kind of get back to normal. I also keep an eye out for my neighbor across the street, is an older woman, and just always want to make sure I see her. She's a single elderly woman, lives alone, and so every once in a while I just want to make sure her garage door opens. I see her car leave. She's fairly active, leaves the house quite a bit, as a matter of fact. But if I don't see her for a while, I'll try to make an extra effort to make sure that Ingrid is okay. Question number 4: how do you normally spend the day during quarantine? Since the question specifically talks about the day, it's really no different than what it used to be. Again, I work from home. I do travel for my job, and my company did put in a travel ban, so that aspect has changed. So when I'm home, I typically would be home for 1 to 2 weeks at a time, and then I'd go on a road trip for a week. So this has probably been the longest that I have actually been home for quite some time. But the actual day job is very similar to the way it had been any other time I was working from home between travels. I get up in the morning. My company's based on the East Coast, so they always start a little bit earlier than I wish they did. But I basically start up. First thing I do is check my email in the morning, make sure that new conference calls, new meetings, anything didn't pop in that I need to know about, that things suddenly aren't falling apart. My company, I sell to public libraries, and they are going through a difficult time right now. And it's something that you would think that because most public libraries in the country closed, it would be very quiet. And in fact, it was quite the opposite, because you still had libraries might be providing at-home services, they might be providing curbside services. They still needed their product, and yet my company, I'm based in Illinois, but my company is based in Pennsylvania. They were under a stay-at-home order, so we were restricted in what we could do at the distribution facility. Libraries had staffing that was restricted. So a lot of my day is, when I first get up, checking to make sure nothing blew up overnight, which, because all my customers are in the Midwest, I tend not to have that much of a problem. And then spending the day dealing with emails, conference calls. We're doing a lot of training. Gratefully, my company kept all of the sales team employed. so that we can maintain and help the customers, but then we're also using some of this downtime, since we're not traveling, to do a little bit of training. So I sit through training sessions quite a bit. I'm running some training sessions for some of our libraries who are using this as a time for them to get training on some of our services and software. So that's pretty much what I do throughout the day. When the day ends, I do have my resale business, THMercantile, and that's where I need to focus on that. So in the evening, I may be shipping out orders that came in through my Etsy store. I've been trying to build this YouTube channel, have a presence on Instagram and Facebook. So that I do primarily in the evenings and on the weekends, which I do have more time to do that because theater is no longer active. Suddenly I have something to fill my time. Question number 5, who are you quarantined with? Again, I kind of have a split answer to this, and if you followed some of my YouTube channels already, again, and I just mentioned earlier, I've talked about my daughter, Amelia. When Amelia did come back from Germany, she was quarantined for 2 weeks, and she quarantined that time with her mother. And then after that quarantine lifted, she has split her time between her mom and me. So really the only person I am quarantined with is my daughter. I typically have her the bulk of the middle of the week because even though she is no longer a student at the University of Bremen, the University of Bremen system had not finished their semester yet. So she is still taking online classes in German for credits for this spring semester. So she tends to do that with me because at her mom's house there are 2 dogs that bark quite a bit, and I tend to be a little bit more boring, I guess, and maybe a little quieter. So she spends the week with me that she can be on her online classes and study and reading and all that stuff in German, and then she spends the weekend with her mom. So I'm quarantined with my daughter, but only part-time. Question number 6, have you been outside and how many times? Really, no. Basically, like a lot of people, my experience of going outdoors is taking the recycling and garbage bins to the curb once a week. Amelia typically goes for a walk almost every day when the weather is nice, and as part of that, she will pick up the mail, which is in a box, a little bit down the street. So I don't even go outside to get the mail. My exposure to the elements, other than the once a week trip for the garbage, is with my resale business. I luckily have U.S. Postal Service does doorside porch pickup for me. So it's getting up in the morning and putting those packages out on the front porch and seeing what the weather is, and then closing the door and coming back inside. Question number 7, how many hours a day are you sleeping? I will say that my sleep schedule has been thrown a little bit. I do still have to get up pretty much at the same time because, again, my office is based on the East Coast, so I have to make sure that I'm ready to go pretty much by 8 o'clock in the morning at the latest. So I still have to get up in the morning, but I have noticed that because I don't have something structured to fill my evening, sometimes I just get caught in editing a video or posting products onto Etsy or doing something on Instagram, and sometimes just killing time on Instagram, that I'll discover it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm still awake. And so my sleep schedule has gotten a little wonky, but I don't have the luxury of sleeping during the day because I have a day job. On the weekend, I might squeeze in a little bit of a nap, just because I can, and sometimes it makes me feel refreshed, but I'm one of those people that sometimes I can get a great sleep and a great nap and I feel totally refreshed, but at other times, like, okay, I just want to crawl back into bed and sleep for 8 more hours. So it's not necessarily always the best idea for me to take a nap. Question number 8, what is your favorite food to snack on during quarantine? Okay, I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, but I literally have to control how often I buy them, because when I bring them in the house, I basically will devour the entire box in, not kidding, a 24-hour period. And that is Suzy Q's. We wonder why I put on some weight. They're just ridiculously sweet. They're ridiculously remind me of great things of my childhood. I don't know. They make me extremely happy. And if they're in the house, I must eat them. So I have to make sure they're not in my house very often. So that is probably the one snack that is kind of an ongoing, if it's here, that's my snack. Other than that, Amelia has basically created the trend, Gorp, good old-fashioned raisins and peanuts with some chocolate chips in there. So sometimes in the afternoon I might do like a little small bowl of those, just kind of to nibble on. But as for just snacky foods, like really I don't have chips in the house. I don't really have sweets unless I have the Suzy Q's. I don't really get into fruits and vegetables as snacks. So I tend not to do a lot of snacking, but when I do, it's totally bad for me. Question number 9. What have you been watching? Well, a couple of years ago, I went through an interesting time in my life. Quite a bit of changes. I was going through a divorce. I was laid off from my job. I was downsizing to a new place that I had to pay for on my own, with a job that I was able to get after my layoff that had a significantly lower pay. So at that time, I had to do a lot of really focusing on what were the priorities, what were my wants versus what were my needs. And it turned out that cable was one of those things that I decided I did not need. So I had high-speed internet, and I had the Netflix, I have Amazon Prime, I have some of those services, but I don't have regular television anymore. I don't even have like the little cheapy things I guess you can get and attach to your TV, even to get traditional channels, the simple channels, PBS, things like that. I just don't have it. So I don't tend to watch what most people are watching. One of the things I decided to do because of the quarantine, having this freeing up some of my time in the evening, I decided to focus on my brand and really focus on my Etsy business and decide like really what can I do, even though it's still a side gig, what can I do, knowing that there was really a very realistic possibility not that far down the path that I could have been laid off. I'm not even saying, knock wood, I'm not even saying that that's not a possibility now. Libraries still haven't really reopened. So I really decided that I was going to use this time productively, and I was going to really focus on building up that business so that I had a revenue stream to support in case something did happen. Gratefully, nothing happened, but I did use that time to really focus on what I should be doing with my brand. So I started organizing the storage for all my products. I tried to get better photography. I invested in some equipment that I could take better photos, and I watched a lot of YouTube. It's basically just on, some videos just on repeat. There are some YouTube resellers that probably saw their viewer hours go up exponentially when I discovered them. It's because I tend to obsess on individuals, and I obsess on, if they landed on something that I was particularly interested in or felt I could learn from, I would watch it over and over again just to make sure that I could gather and get as much information as I could so that I could try and implement it myself. So some of the popular YouTubers out there, I basically cut my teeth on Jeffrey at Real Nifty Vintage. He was the one, this was pre-quarantine, he was the one I watched religiously and really gave me the motivation and the confidence that I could do this. So I always, catch his videos. But I started doing a couple of the challenges, so I discovered new videos, like My Blessed Nest hosted a challenge. That's how I discovered George at the Antique Nomad, and I absolutely love George's videos. George has an approach to vintage, which isn't always the norm. He considers himself a generalist, which most of us do, but for however he has done it, just from being in the industry for long enough, or however he does his studying, even though he's a quote-unquote generalist, he knows a lot about a lot of things. And so I'm always fascinated by his videos because he can just pick something up and say, this is what it is, this is where it came from, this is why it was made, this is why it's common, this is why it's rare. And he tosses those pieces of information off so casually that a lot of times you miss it. And so I have to go back and I watch his videos over and over again. So I've just really been watching a lot of YouTube. I do every once in a while pop in and watch, some Netflix, watch some Amazon Prime. I scour Amazon Prime about once or twice a week to see what sales they're having to purchase videos. And if something drops below $4.99 that's on my watch list, I'll typically buy one just so I have it. Because again, even with movies, I could watch a movie 10 times in a day and not be tired of it, because usually it's running in the background while I'm doing something else. So I've watched, my guilty pleasure is Smash. That's on the NBC app for free. I absolutely love, because I love theater, I love that program, and there's only 2 seasons of it, and I just watch them on repeat, and they're totally cheesy and campy and silly, but they're so much fun, and it's just great mind-numbing nothing, particularly just for background noise where I might be doing a spreadsheet or something for work. Question number 10, how much toilet tissue did you buy? Admittedly, I probably bought more than I needed to or should have, but it wasn't on purpose. I wasn't one of those weird hoarders. So as I mentioned, I kind of was trying to be prepared for the quarantine, but it kind of snuck up on me. And so one of my visits, when I bought my 20 items at Woodman's, they had the pallet was there with the toilet tissue, and they were already at that point limiting it to only 2 per person. So I grabbed 1. Like at that time, I literally could not remember how much toilet tissue I had in my home. I did not go to Woodman's to buy toilet tissue, but it was the brand that I liked. And I figured, you know what? It's not like it's going to expire. So I bought 1 and I carried that home. Turned out I already had some, but that's okay. It doesn't go bad. So I only bought 1. About a week into it, when things really did shut down and really things were getting more serious, there were certain items that I realized I was going to need that just I had to go out and I had to get these items. And one of them was a medication that I had to get filled at Walgreens because it could not be delivered. So I had to go. And when I walked into the store, they literally had just received a pallet of toilet tissue. They must have been sold out prior to that. And as I'm walking through the door, a package of toilet tissue was handed into my arms. So it was the brand that I like. So I grabbed it. I did not need it. Now I did redeem myself slightly. A friend of mine was having financial difficulty, and so I made a little care package for him. And I included 4 rolls of toilet tissue because I felt like I had a surplus. So I wasn't a hoarder, and I certainly wasn't trying to resell it, but I did probably end up with more than I needed. Question number 11. If you work from home, do you dress in the morning? Okay, we'll see if my coworkers actually watch this. As I've mentioned, my company's based on the East Coast. I am one of the few people in the Midwest. There are some people on the West Coast, but a lot of my meetings are I'm considered part of the Eastern region. So a lot of my meetings will start at 8 o'clock my time, if not earlier. Usually they'll take into consideration that I'm an hour behind them, but most of my meetings will start the day at 8. Depending on how late I went to bed the night before or what happened the night before, there have been times I will just basically come downstairs, my pajamas, put a shirt over my pajama shirt, and just do my webinar and do my Zoom meeting in my pajama bottoms, sitting in this exact location. This is exactly where I do my work videos as well. And just I never stand up so no one can see that I'm in my pajama bottoms. If any of my coworkers ever really paid attention, they would notice, typically I would have a collared shirt like this with another shirt underneath it like this. And if they paid really close attention, the color shirt underneath the dress shirt rarely changed colors. It was either a burgundy, this happens to be burgundy, but this is not my pajama shirt. I made myself pretty for you guys. It's either I have a burgundy shirt that I wear with my t-shirt that I wear with my pajamas, and I have a gray shirt that I wear with my pajamas. And so I may vary the shirt that goes over it, but if anyone really paid attention, they would know that I have my pajama shirt on underneath it. It gets into a weird hygiene. I know that Vinny from Vintage Vinny just posted his video yesterday. I don't want to say that I've taken a vacation from personal hygiene, but I will say that because I'm not visiting customers, I am not traveling, I don't have as much of a regiment to get cleaned up. I want to make sure that I'm cleaning my clothes and that every once in a while I'll put something fresh on. So, but again, because I have to be on meetings and we do video meetings like this, I'll typically have some level of presentable clothing on, but I could have my pajamas on underneath. So that was quarantine Q&A. Some of the questions I think are maybe getting a little aged at this point because we are starting to open things up in the country. Now in Illinois, we are still pretty much in a stay-at-home order, There's some little bit of tidbits of information floating out there. We have a complicated 5-phase plan that some areas might be opening into phase 3, which means some things might start opening up. At this point, I have not heard whether thrift stores are going to be on the list for reopening. Some retailers are allowed to do curbside, but that really doesn't cover the thrift stores. But I know that my barber, which I'm like really getting kind of lanky here, my barber just announced that they think they'll be opening within the next week or two. So, you know, some things are starting to loosen up. So some of these questions maybe would have been better asked a month ago, but you know, the challenge kind of circulated. It was a nice idea. And in some ways, maybe it got to know me a little bit better. Maybe, I don't know. I tend to share a lot anyway. But I appreciate you joining me. As part of the quarantine Q&A, I am then responsible for nominating 3 additional people. Now, I did go on to these 3 people's websites or YouTube channels to see if they had posted it. So I don't know if they've already been tagged and they chose not to participate, or if they participated but it wasn't marked in such a way that I found it on their YouTube channel. So if I'm nominating 3 people that have already done it, I do apologize. It is kind of interesting to see if this moves forward. So we'll see what happens. The first person I'm nominating, I'm getting 3 at one time. It's Tim, Josie, and Ma Dukes at Over the Years. They're one of the channels I've discovered more recently. They just, within the last month or two, hit their 1,000 subscriber mark. They are a super fun channel to watch. Tim is the primary personality behind the channel, and he is in a variety of different areas. And depending on how you look at the channel, I think he just did a haul on hats. And Dale Earnhardt, which admittedly is not really something I'm particularly interested in. But if you do a deep dive through his channel, he's also done a specialty episode on Flow Blue, another episode on Fenton. That family unit, Tim, his girlfriend Josie, and his mom Dukes, are so knowledgeable, and they share the information in such a fun way that you're learning without even realizing you're being taught. So I love his channel. He's agreed to do a Trusty's Vintage deep dive with me, and I can't wait until he picks which topic he's going to do, because he already does his own deep dives. So I'm curious if I'm going to get a deeper dive or if we're going to pick something new. So I'm nominating Over the Years. The second person I'm going to nominate is Julie at A&J's Retro and Vintage. I met that channel doing one of the original challenges I participated in, George's challenge for at the Antique Nomad, the Show Off Your Bunker challenge. And I realized that they have not posted a video since then. So I am nominating them to do this because they have some good content on their channel, and I think they should post more. And they're based in Canada, so it's always fun to have that little bit of a difference of what's going on up there. And then the third person that I am nominating is another YouTuber that she does a little bit of reselling. But what I liked about her, I think I discovered her through one of the challenges, although now I can't remember which one. But it is Kelly at Moss Stone Story. And what I really like about Kelly is when she does her haul videos or does some of her informative videos, she is like me in the sense that she'll try and do as much research as she can so that what she talks about will also educate, that it's not just a show and tell of look what I bought and what I'm going to resell. It's look what I bought, here's where it's from, this is how it's marked, this is why I bought it, this is why I think I'm going to sell it for what I think I'm going to get for it. And so you can watch it whether you're a reseller or a collector. She just puts a lot of effort into her videos and a lot of research, which I really appreciate. So nominating Over the Years, AJ's Retro and Vintage, and Moss Stone Story. I hope you participate. So again, this is Patrick, Trusty Huckster Mercantile. Thanks for watching this video. If you've gotten this far and you haven't already, please subscribe. I'm trying to put out different content all the time. So if you join my channel, you'll be able to see a variety of different topics that'll be coming out that maybe won't be as personal, or maybe that you might care about a little bit more. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Etsy under my abbreviations THMercantile, standing for Trusty Huckster Mercantile. So again, thank you for your time, putting your trust in Trusty Huckster. Goodbye.
Sure was nice to know you. Oh, maybe I'll catch you on the New York train. Or maybe I'll never see your face again.